ADC Sports presents a Frick Media Productions, created by the founder and editor at the ADC Network, Sam Frick. This is the opening drive. All right, welcome to episode 6 of the opening drive. My name is Sam Frick. I am the founder and editor at ADC Sports, covering schools across Northeast Indiana, Elkhart County, Fort Wayne, and Marion, Indiana. We're just going to make this very, very short this week. I don't have time to go much more in depth. In fact, we're in week 9. We're at this point in the season. Nobody cares about these conferences anymore. We're getting right to the playoffs. And so we may just talk very briefly about some of the teams that claimed a conference championship last week, but we're not going to spend a lot of time this week talking about these teams. We're really going to put all the effort into the sectional previews. We'll see what happens for next week. It may just be we just preview the sectionals next week and we just don't have a show next week, but we'll see what happens. But anyway, just wanted to give a brief congratulations to the Adams Central Flying Jets. They defeated Bluffton 47-17 to win the outright ACAC title for the 5th consecutive year, which means the Jets continue their streak of ACAC sets, which is over 30 wins in a row against ACAC conference opponents. So the Jets are going to win the ACAC. Don't listen to all the people saying there's a share and whatnot. No. There's no sharing in this conference. So the Jets won last week against Bluffton. The Bluffton Tigers are done with ACAC play, which means the Jets are going to win the ACAC. So I just want to make sure I mention that. Let's see here. Congratulations to Cherubusco. They defeated West Noble last week, 24-23 in come from behind fashion. It did not matter because they are not considered conference opponents in football, but it was a battle of 2 division champions. So the Busco Eagles, with that nice win against West Noble, good momentum to carry them into the final week of the regular season and going into a tough first round sectional game against the Bluffton Tigers, which Cherubusco will be hosting. Also, NE8 slate. In the NE8 slate, there will be a game of the week preview posted either Thursday or Friday between Leo and DeKalb. At DeKalb, it'll be a good preparation for 4A Central 19 between two teams that have same conference record. Leo 7-1, DeKalb 6-2 overall. Both 5-1 in conference play. DeKalb has never won a football game against Leo, so this is a good opportunity for DeKalb to get a historic win against the Leo Lions to get them ready for Columbia City, a rematch from earlier this year. I believe that would have been week 5. Is that right? Yep. It would have been week 5 when DeKalb defeated Columbia City by the score 28-7, giving DeKalb their first win against the Eagles since 2019. SAC, there's only 2 conferences left in our area that have yet to decide a conference champion. I know Eastbrook defeated Mississauga last week by the score 35-14. Eastbrook claimed a share of the conference. It's only a share. If they lose to Oak Hill and Ole Miss wins against Madison Grant, there's a share of the conference. But all things considered, I don't really care about that at this point, and I would honestly be surprised if it's a share. No disrespect to Oak Hill or Madison Grant. I just would be pretty surprised. Let's take a look at the Three Rivers Conference. We're going to be very brief on this because Val Tsoursouris is going to talk much more in depth about these 2 teams. He does a great job breaking down the matchup coming up this week here. Rochester 7-1, 7-0 conference play. This is a team that's only given up 4 points per game. They run a wing T offense. The Rochester Zebras are seeking their first conference championship since 2022. They have not won a conference championship outright in over a decade at Rochester for football, and right now they're on pace to have the best scoring defense in the history of Rochester football, which Val told me it was dates back to the 1920s. So it's a long time for the Zebras. Meanwhile, Maconaquah Braves, try saying that fast. Maconaquah is the defending TRC champion. They won it last year outright, which they beat out Northwestern to win the TRC. This year, they're 8-0 on the season. Obviously, they're undefeated in TRC play at 7-0, just like Rochester is 7-0 in conference play. Rochester's only loss came against Tippy Valley back in week 2, and that was a 7-2 score. Maconaquah right now averaging 41.1 points per game. Last year, when they won the conference, they averaged 40.2 points per game, and that was their best scoring offense in program history, en route to a regional loss to Bishop Lures. This season, they're on pace to surpass that number in 2025 as Maconaquah seeks to repeat as conference champions in the TRC and also looking to repeat as sectional champions, which before last season, they did not win a sectional before in football. So looking to repeat as sectional champions in 3A27, which we will not cover at ADC Sports. But nonetheless, that is relevant news for the Braves and Maconaquah. So it's basically a spread offense against the Ween T of the Zebras. Will be an interesting matchup there. Again, Val Tsoursouris will talk much more in depth about these two when you hear my interview with Val of RTC TV. Lastly, I want to mention the SAC because that is the other conference that has yet determined a conference champion, and they don't have a share. So this is a tiebreaker situation for the SAC right now. As things currently stand, it's Bishop Dwayner and Carroll tied for first place. But as things stand, because of Dwayner's win over Carroll in the regular season back in week 4, 9-6, Dwayner currently has the tiebreaker over Carroll. So if Dwayner wins their game, regardless of what happens with Carroll, Bishop Dwayner will win the SAC, and they will do so outright. All Dwayner has to do is beat Southside, and they win the SAC. And why is that important? Because Carroll defeated Northrop last week, 48-37. Carroll also defeated Homestead by the score of 49-0. Dwayner also defeated Homestead 15-3. So Dwayner has a tiebreaker over Carroll. They have a tiebreaker over Homestead. Northrop has a loss. And so the only way Northrop can beat out Bishop Dwayner, or there be a share of the conference, is you would need Carroll to lose, which is highly unlikely. You would need Dwayner to lose. That's even more unlikely. And then you would need Northrop to win, which Northrop is probably going to win this week because they are playing. They're playing Wayne, right? They're playing the Wayne Generals. Carroll's playing Bishop Lures. That's a little bit closer game, but then Dwayner's got Southside. So it's very unlikely we're going to see a share of the SAC or Northrop somehow coming out with a conference championship, or Carroll coming out with the conference championship. So we're very likely going to see Dwayner winning this whole thing outright, but I just want to make sure we mentioned that ahead of time. If Bishop Dwayner does hang on, this will be their first SAC title since 2018. And so that is going to do it for the breakdown portion of a much more abbreviated version of the opening drive. Now I will shift over to my interview with Val Tsoursouris as we talk much more in depth about Rochester football and talking about the TRC championship game where the Rochester Zebras will host the Maconaquah Braves. Rochester looking to win that conference championship for the first time in about 3 years. Maconaquah seeking to repeat conference champions. And now I will turn it over to Val and the interview. Joining me is the sports editor and sportscaster at RTC TV, Val Tsoursouris, as he's here to talk about the Rochester Zebras as they prepare for the TRC championship game against Maconaquah. Val, take me through this season so far for your coverage, and particularly with Rochester. It's been an exciting year for that area with Tippy Valley having a great season, Caston's doing decent, and then Rochester right in the cusp of a TRC championship.
And Pioneers on the top 10 in Class 1A as well. We cover them as well. With Rochester, this is a team with 13 seniors on it. There were high hopes for this year. I think they came in with something like a record of, I want to say they lost 8 games in 3 years. So this senior group is not only experienced, but they had won a lot of football games coming into this year. But the thing is that they never had kind of won the big one, so to speak. They had their arch rivals, Tippecanoe Valley. They had lost to them 3 years in a row, and unfortunately, they lost to them again this year, 7-2, back in week 2, in a game in which they actually outgained Valley the whole game and really outplayed them, especially the last 3 quarters of the game. Valley scored on their first drive of the game to lead 7-0 and never scored again. But again, there were high hopes for Rochester this year with the 13 seniors. I know they mentioned on the IHSAA pairings program, they mentioned Brant Beck, and for good reason. Brant has over 4,000 career yards rushing. I mean, you get to 4,000, that's a pretty elite group. Rochester's been playing football, I think, since the 1920s, and I think they have something like 5 players in their history rush for 4,000 yards, no more than 5. And on top of that, I mean, he's the inside line. He's a big-time linebacker on defense. I mean, if all he did was play a linebacker on defense, he'd be a huge impact player. But they also have 12 other seniors, including quarterback Carson Pollock. We know Carson's going to play baseball at Taylor University. He's an outstanding baseball player, but he also plays football and basketball as well. So outstanding seniors all over the field. Clarence Garrett at that cornerback spot on defense. He's been huge for them. One of the team leaders, Zach Parks, at the safety spot. He's a senior, outstanding player, outstanding baseball player as well. You look at some of those defensive linemen. Declan Gard finished 4th at state in heavyweight at wrestling last year. He decided to come out for football this year and he has made a huge impact as the left tackle on the offensive line and as a defensive tackle as well. Callan Furvita, we know his brother Colton Furvita was an outstanding running back and receiver. Callan's a lineman, and he has done an outstanding job as well at that right guard spot. When you run a wing T offense, the guard position is so important because you got to get out with that good footwork, and Callan does a great job at the right guard. And then the left guard is Mason Heisey, and he's another outstanding guard, known for his footwork. His nickname is Big Guy, and he has been a big man on that Rochester offensive line. And then I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Grant Clark. He's going to be playing football on Saturdays somewhere next year. Outstanding defensive end. And they've added him on offense at the tight end spot, and he is a very good – they don't throw him the ball very, very much. I think he only has something like 2 catches all season, but he is an outstanding blocking tight end and gives more muscle on that offensive line. I'm sure I'm forgetting a couple seniors. Yeah.
Yeah, and Rochester, you mentioned they run the ball a lot, and Beck's rushed for over 4,500 yards, dominant team. They're giving up just 4 points per game, which is on pace to be their best scoring defense in Rochester history for football, which dates back to 1920.
That was the team goal at the start of the year from Ron Schaefer, and his son Isaac Schaefer is the defensive coordinator.
Yes, so you got a great defense with this powerful run game with Rochester coming up 49-7 winning at Northwestern. Coming up on Friday, they're going to be hosting the Maconaquah Braves. They are the defending Three Rivers Conference champions. They run a spread offense with Maconaquah, led by a really good quarterback, Aiden Robertson, who's thrown for over nearly 2,500 yards passing. You got Noah Tarr, nearly 1,000 yards catching for him. Marcel Sims has rushed for almost 1,200 yards rushing. They're averaging 41 points per game, and they're coming off a comeback win against Manchester last week. They were down 28-0 at halftime. They scored 29 in the second half, including a game-winning field goal from about 20 yards out with 30 seconds left to defeat the Squires 29-20. That's a good Manchester team that runs a spread of their own. When you look at this Maconaquah team, they're defending TRC champions, great offense with the Braves. This is going to get them ready for Rochester, getting ready for the state tournament. What stands out to you about the Maconaquah Braves and how they match up with the Rochester defense?
Well, here we are 1 year ago. We might have had this conversation 1 year ago at this time when both teams were undefeated in conference play going into this championship game, and Maconaquah won 30-14 when they met at Bunker Hill. Now they meet at Rochester this year. Aiden Robinson is back from last year, but Maconaquah did graduate those 2 great receivers in A.J. Kelly and Fuddy Kyle, so they've had to rely a little bit more on the running game this year. They're still a spread team, and they're still going to pass it a bunch, but relying a little bit more on the run this year with Marcel Sims. And why wouldn't you if you had an athlete like Marcel Sims? He's a terrific running back. And I think that's the main story of this game. Marcel Sims, who I think had 131 yards rushing against Manchester and had some big runs in their comeback last week, against a Rochester team whose strength, I believe, is run defense. They really plug up the middle. It is hard to run inside the tackles against this Rochester defensive group. They like to rotate in the defensive tackles, keep fresh bodies in there. And again, the defensive ends with Grant Clark and Mason Heisey are also a big strength of this team. So I think that's going to be that's one of the big storylines of this game. The other is Rochester's pass defense. You look at 2 years ago, they lose to Lafayette Central Catholic in the sectional semifinals. LCC had big passing plays in the second half. They were able to come back and win that game. Last year, they lose at Eastern 28-24. Eastern runs a spread, and they had some big passing plays in that game. So now and that was after they lost to Maconaquah, who runs a spread. So Rochester's had some trouble against spread teams in the past. How will they defend this particular Maconaquah team? But again, the front seven is so good that they make life easier for the secondary.
That is for sure. Great linebacker unit at Rochester, and that's going to be the matchup. Going to be the linebackers, the front unit of Rochester against the spread, the athletes of Maconaquah. Can they slow down? Can they contain the pass? But more importantly, can they contain the backfield? Because Maconaquah has to rely more about that this year with the Braves. I want to talk a little bit more about Rochester beyond the numbers. Rochester got a great team, as we know. Can you tell me more about what makes the Rochester Zebras the way they are in 2025?
Well, again, it's the 13 seniors. It's that experience, and I talk with the kids after the game, and they like to talk about the fact that there's accountability in the locker room. That if somebody's not working as hard as they possibly can, that somebody will get on them. Hey, you got to work harder. This won't suffice. And kids aren't. They say we're not afraid to get in each other's face and push each other to be our best. And I think, and that seems to be a different mindset that they've had in previous years. Again, Rochester's had. Again, a really good, this is their 5th consecutive winning season. It's not like their winning is new to them, but I think they're just pushing each other a little bit harder this year. And that's the sense that you get. Even last week when they beat Northfield 51-14, and they weren't happy after the game. They said, again, they lacked focus. And, Northfield had a 69-yard touchdown run by their very good quarterback, Jake Perney. But it was like, hey, you cannot slack off, not for a minute, because of, hey, we were able to win this game against Northfield, but if you do that against Eastbrook, they could take that to the house, and that could be the difference between winning and losing. And you look at sectional 36, and you look at those. There seem to be 4 really good teams in Rochester, Eastbrook, Eastern, and Alexandria. I mean, that could be the difference between a win or a loss. And again, Rochester hasn't won a sectional since 2000. And Coach Ron Schaefer, I don't think he hasn't shy from talking about that. It would mean a lot for this program. And what's interesting is that, and I did some research, in the last 4, it's not the first round of the sectional that seems to trip them up. It's that second game. They're 1-13 in their last 14 sectional semifinal games. That dates back to, I think, 2002. Last year they lost in the sectional semifinals to Eastern. The year before that, they lost in the sectional semifinals to LCC after getting a bye. So, I think there's that motivation of they want to add something to the trophy case, basically.
And we'll talk a little bit more about that later on. But talking about 2A36 coming up, that's kind of my last question here.
Mm-hmm.
You got Rochester, you got Eastern Greentown, who won a sectional last year.
Yeah.
Eastbrook's on the cusp of winning the CIC. Talk about Rochester running kind of that wing T offense.
Right.
Eastbrook's runs something relatively similar to that. Eastern Greentown runs a spread, as you know. Tipton runs something similar along the lines. Alexandria runs a really good spread as well. When you look at this sectional, you look at what, in comparison to what we have coming up this week, how does this game prepare you for the sectional? And then what are you most looking forward to with this sectional? Because Rochester, even though they get Elwood in the first round, they're guaranteed getting a big game the following week if they advance against either Eastbrook or Alexandria.
Right. Rochester beat Elwood 46-0 in last year's sectional. You would have to think they're going to be heavily favored against Elwood, and regardless of what happens this week against Maconaquah. Hopefully everybody makes it out healthy, but Elwood has been shut out 5 times this year, and the Rochester defense has posted 4 shutouts. So if you're struggling to score points, boy, I don't think you want to run into Rochester's defense. And meanwhile, Eastbrook, they have to play at Alexandria, and then if they win that game, they have to likely go to Rochester. So back-to-back road games off the bat. I mean, Eastbrook's having a tremendous year, and not that I have to tell you that. I was following your tweets, your posts last Friday night, but that would be interesting. And also, again, hey, we get to look ahead, right? We're not coaches, so I'm looking ahead to a possible Eastbrook-Rochester matchup. Eastbrook, known for their option offense, against a Rochester team that really whose strength of their team is, again, their run defense. So that would be a very interesting matchup. So, so I think that's what's intriguing about this sectional. And again, from Eastbrook's standpoint, having to play a spread team against Alexandria, and then have to come back and face Rochester's wing T and their size and physicality on the front line. From looking at it from Eastbrook's standpoint, Rochester used to play Eastbrook. Mark Miller, who retired back in 2011, he and Jeff Adamson were very, very good friends. I think they were college teammates, in fact, at Manchester University. Rochester actually played Eastbrook in a non-conference game in the early 2010s, I think 4 straight years, like 2011 through 2014, and I think they split the 4 games evenly. So and then they played in the sectional, I want to say, 2018 maybe, and that was a better Eastbrook team. They came into Rochester and won 48-20. But again, it would be a very interesting matchup if it came down to Rochester and Eastbrook. But I would imagine Alexandria and Elwood, they'll have their own things to say about that as well.
Yeah, that is for sure. Val, any final thoughts before we let you go and just talk about what's coming up with RTC TV for this week?
Well, we will have the Maconaquah Rochester game on RTC TV4. You can find us on the IHSAA Champions Network. My partner Randy Wynn and I do every game. Randy does play-by-play. I do color commentary as well as I can, and I'm kind of the stats guy as well. And meanwhile, I also have a website, RTC4sports.com, also a sports writer. You can read all my writing there, or in the Rochester Sentinel. They carry my stuff after it appears on the web. And I cover Tippecanoe Valley as well. Valley having a great year. They are 6-2. Valley has not won a sectional since 1992. Is this the year they break that streak? In fact, Coach Stephen Moriarty was a player on that 1992 team. is this the year Valley does it? And of course, his son, Grady Moriarty, one of the stars of the team. Grady's going to be playing on Saturdays next year. He's an outstanding running back and linebacker. Wes Parker, a terrific running back. Valley plays Bremen this week. Then they make the long trip to Angola next week. That is, it's funny. Valley had to travel to Chittard 2 years ago, and now they travel to Angola. That might even be a longer trip than Chittard. But again, I'm kind of looking forward to a possible West Noble Valley matchup in that sectional semifinal round. That would be a very interesting matchup if they played. The game would be at Valley if it happened. But this is you're talking to the Valley kids. They talk about the team chemistry they have. The team just gets along really well. Just a very, again, they play that gap control defense. It's a tough defense to play against, and they have really turned the corner since those 2 back-to-back losses to Hamilton Heights and Knox earlier in the year. And I also cover Pioneer. What a year they're having. They play at North Judson. That game will decide the Hoosier North Conference this week. North Judson ranked number, I think, 2 or 3 in Class 1A, and Pioneer's ranked number 8. And Pioneer, obviously, we know about their football tradition, just tremendous going back decades. And they're led by their quarterback, Micah Rands, who's outstanding as well.
Oh, yeah, that is for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's definitely for sure. We definitely know the history of Pioneer. That's for sure. That area in general has had great football over the years when it comes to football for all 3 of those schools and whatnot. Val, thank you for taking the time to talk about the Rochester Zebras and whatnot, and good luck this week.
Sam, thanks. Anytime.